Welcome, everyone, to episode 10 of the Loop Plus. My name is Jessica Betts. I get the honor of leading our community and member engagement here at Grace Point. And today I have with me Rob Whorton, one of our members. You and your family have been here how long, Rob?
We first attended Grace Point around this time of year, probably between Thanksgiving and Christmas of 2003. So close to 21 years, I suppose.
21 years. Yeah. It's been tell me a little bit about your family. For anyone that doesn't know you, haven't met you, tell us about the Whortons.
Sure. I'm married to Dawn. Dawn actually works here at Grace Point. She's a financial administrator here. We have 3 children, 2 adult sons, Jacob and Caleb. And Jacob is married to Katie. And then we have a 12-year-old daughter, Allie Kate.
Yes. Well, that's going to lead actually the next, because the way I got to know Allie Kate so well is I got to go on a mission trip. My family, your family was there as well. But that leads me really to how I want to start off, which is you have been here 20-something years and have just done so many different things as a member of the church. Talk to us a little bit about your journey, what first brought you to Grace Point, and what does that journey look like for you all?
Yeah, absolutely. My wife and I were going to a small church in Rogers. It was actually a church that her family helped start. And we were just really feeling God's calling to go to a different church to see what, really feeling his moving to make a change. And, the church we were going to was a small church, very expository teaching. But we just felt like we needed more community. And so we started visiting some churches. And when we came to Grace Point, we just felt at home. We felt very comfortable here. And as we started, attending more, we just really were struck by the desire to, really the same desire we have today to show and share Jesus, to serve others and to be out in the community and in the world. And, that was something the church we were going to wasn't a focus of theirs. And so that was really appealing to us.
So that has led you to serve in a lot of different areas. Where all have you all served around the church?
Well, I have served in the kids ministry, currently serve in the student ministry. I was a deacon for, I think, a total of 10 years. We've served in, we used to host an adoption discovery class. That was way back early on. And that was back when our church was kind of just getting our footing under, focusing on foster and adoptive families. And so that was really something that Don and I enjoyed doing. I guess probably the only thing I haven't done is sing. I cannot sing, and no one would want me to. So
I say the same thing, Rob.
Yeah. So I think that may be the better way to go. That's the one thing that I probably haven't done.
Yeah. Well, I know right now you serve, of course, on a security team with First Impressions, which I'm very thankful for and so faithful for that. But I definitely, when I think of you in the different ways that you have really poured into our church, it is through missions. You have a huge heart for missions. Just got back not too long ago from a mission trip. Yeah. Talk to me about that work and your involvement in that.
Sure. Well, it's kind of a funny story how missions became a part of my life. I was, I think it was the fall of 2009, I was asked to go on a mission trip to Zambia. There was a group of people starting an orphanage there. And I've been in construction all my life. And so I was asked to go and kind of help them with the construction aspect of getting the orphanage built. And I said, sure, that was awesome. I have a real passion for kids and orphans, and construction was something that I knew. And so I said yes. And it wasn't until after I was telling Don that I'm going on this mission trip that I realized I had to fly. Mm-mm. And I was 38, I think, at the time, and I had never flown in an airplane. And I was scared to fly in an airplane. I'm man enough to admit.
And that's not a short flight.
That is not a short flight. So, long story short, it wasn't myself that said yes to that trip. It was God that said yes for me. Yeah. And was extremely blessed in that trip. And I've had a good relationship with New Day ever since, and I've been blessed to go to many mission trips in many different places and see God's hand at work in the nations. So that one little step really started my journey and my passion for missions.
Mm-hmm. Seems like that can be the way it is a lot of times in life, taking that first step of obedience or in faith. Mm-hmm. And then what God does with that can be, I don't know, beyond what we could dream. Oh. So on that, I mean, obviously you have been at our church and seen and walked through that journey with us. And gosh, I was saying the other day, just thinking back, because I've been here about the same amount of time, just thinking back of just all the different things and people. And then we were all together this past Sunday night at our church gathering. And I don't know, when you think about, Rob, when you look back as someone that has been here a while to where we find ourselves right now, what do you feel, I don't know, God stirring in you, or where are you at with that?
I think something that stood out to me from our gathering Sunday night was that same spirit, that same feeling of community that we felt over 20 years ago was still present. And, I've seen, Grace Point go through many different seasons. And there's been seasons of plenty and seasons of drought, per se. And through those seasons, I've seen, God be faithful to the work that is being done here through our members. And I think that where we're at now is just another one of those seasons. I think I love nature, and nature's always been a big part of my life. When I was a kid, I'd just go out and sit in the woods and just listen to the birds and stuff. So I notice a lot of things in relation to nature. And when we were in Zambia here just last month, they are experiencing a really bad drought, and their rainy season usually lasts their dry season usually lasts for about 5 months. And this year, it has been over 7 months since they've had a rain. And so they're experiencing a really bad drought. And when I was walking around the orphanage, the campus there, I was noticing trees that were starting to bud out and starting to get new leaves on them. And I was just so amazed to see that when they haven't had a rain in over 7 months. And so I asked someone there, Malinga there at the orphanage, I'm like, so what's this tree doing? How can it, be putting on new leaves? And he said, well, it's getting ready for the rain. And so that just really stood out to me as how we should be when we are in a season of drought. We should be in preparation for what God has in store. We should be preparing ourselves, preparing our hearts for the rains that are to come, because God will bring the rains, and God will move us through the season we're in to another season. And so I thought of the faith that tree had, and how we we should have that same faith as we walk through tough seasons. And that could be, related to us as a church body right now, or to us as individuals. I know, a lot of folks may be going through tough times, hard times in their own lives, but just to get encouragement from that, God is still there in those seasons, and that we should focus on what He has for us to do in those seasons.
So when I come to these Sunday, I was talking, and the one thing I don't know, just sense that you are doing is that. You were talking to me, we both also serve in youth on Wednesday nights, and they had just done a message over the talents. And
Yes.
I don't know, it just definitely feels like you saw that tree in Zambia. You felt that message. And I think you were like, that is what I'm going to do, is prepare for the rain. And I know you're talking about the church going through a hard time, but also personally, people going through hard times. Like, how do you find yourself preparing, both as a member of this church and or personally, for the rain in the middle of, before it gets here? How are you preparing?
Sure. Well, I love analogies, and people that know me know I love analogies. So I hope I don't get people get tired of my analogies. But, for me, it's just where I'm focused on. I remember, I'm a native to Bentonville. And so I grew up down on North Main Street, and I remember driving to town with my mom and being in the back seat. And she would see people, she knew. And so she would wave, as she was driving. And most all the time she would run the car up on the curb because wherever she looked is where she drove.
Oh my gosh, my husband's going to hate me for this, but that's what he does. It's so funny.
And, and I think that that's how we are as people. Wherever our focus is, that's where our feet are going to take us. And for me, it's just, and I'm definitely not perfect at it by no means, but to try to keep my focus on Christ. And because I know that my feet will go where my focus is. And I think that is what I try to do personally, and is to just keep my focus on Him, and keep my focus not on the details, not on, the flaming dumpster that's floating by, or, anything like that, which is hard. But that's what I try to do.
Yeah. One of the things we talked about on Sunday night is just the vision of our church having an unyielding pursuit to make disciples from here, Northwest Arkansas, to the nations. To do that, you do have to keep your eyes on Christ. I mean, if you're going to have an unyielding, you look up that word, pursuit, you have to solely keep your eyes on Christ and having that hunger for Him. And I think being broken for those that are lost, and that those who are in need. And recently, you and I were talking about that, of like becoming truly a people of God at Grace Point, who don't allow ourselves to get caught up in church, but awaken to the joy and the hunger of loving our King and being broken for the people that we walk beside at our offices, our teams at school, our elementary. I mean, obviously trying to disciple our kids as well, to have just that love of God that must come out and help shine light and be salt in this world, and of just really God claiming our church to be that again, building us up to truly be that. Do you, what are your thoughts around that and what you see God doing in that way?
Yeah, I think that, we are called to be ministers of reconciliation. In, 2 Corinthians 5, it tells us that we are to be ministers of reconciliation and ambassadors for Christ. And I think that, if we are truly seeking Him, it tells us that we no longer see in that passage, that we no longer see people from a worldly perspective. And I think that, if we are truly seeking to be ministers of reconciliation, that's where our focus should be, on those that need to hear the good news, whether that be in our workplace, across the street, or across the world. I think that that's the focus that I look at, and that's what keeps me going, really, to be honest with you, through some tough times, is to know that we have a calling above whatever our situation may be, and there are those out there that God desires us to interact with, that God desires us to seek, and that is going to, He desires that no matter our situation.
Yeah. You and I were talking again on Sunday, and you said something to me that I was like, oh, you were like, a lot of times in different situations in your life, you find yourselves having to really work on what people's perceptions are versus what the reality of the situation is.
Sure.
And we were talking about specifically in church that when there are a lot of numbers or there's a lot going on, that the perception can be this church is really growing. Because really what we were talking about that time is right now of just the reality of how much God is alive and working in our church, and the health of our church coming to just maybe a new level. Yeah. So talk to me just about that perception reality and how you see that when it comes to I don't know, church and specifically Grace Point.
Sure. Well, I think perception is a big thing nowadays. I think social media obviously fuels that, and I know in my 9 to 5 I see that a lot. In that sometimes I've heard the saying that someone's perspective is their truth, and that I think that may be true, but I think that's very dangerous too. So I think that we just have to keep our perspective in Christ and not of the world, because one of my favorite stories in the Bible is the story of Joseph. And Joseph had so many ups and downs. He was the chosen son, and he was sold into slavery, and then he found favor in Potiphar's house, and then he went to prison, and then obviously he was a leader in Egypt. And through those times, one of the a passage that has always stood out to me, and I actually have it here. It's in the end of Genesis 39 when he was thrown into prison. And it says, "But the Lord was with Joseph and showed him steadfast love and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison." And then on down at the end of verse 23, and it says, "And whatever he did, the Lord made it succeed." So he was in prison, and the perception of him being a prisoner, that wasn't the reality. He was in prison, but God was using him in that space, in that place. And so many times I think we get caught up in what will people think? What perception are we having here? Instead of just being in the moment. And, for Joseph in that moment, he was a prisoner. And I'm sure the perception of him probably wasn't the best among people. But God was with him, and God was using him. And so I think that's what helps me, is to, try to keep a godly perspective instead of letting the world's perspective affect me.
Something I've been thinking about a lot is the word, two words, covenant member. I was speaking with someone the other day, and I mean, I've said that word a lot actually lately because we're working on our membership class and becoming a covenant member of Grace Point. But this, when we were talking, this person was like, it's a covenant member.
Mm.
It's not just I'm going to be a member and it's like, hey, I'm out, something didn't go right, I'm
Sure.
out. It's a covenant member, like a marriage, like it's a covenant relationship. It's the bride of Christ with, that depth of a relationship.
Mm.
And so for me, I've been turning that inward
Mm.
of what does that mean for me to be an all in covenant member where we are right now at this church, because this is my church.
Mhm.
And to be all in mentally, to be all in of things, of capturing my thoughts, that if something's not going the way I want, to not let my mind go down a negative trail, but to be all in and turn around, as you say, and put my eyes back on Christ, to be all in my talents, whatever that be, with my resources, whether it be my time, our family's tithing, whatever that be. But just that covenant member, to just taking that up a notch in my mind, to be like, I'm in a covenant relationship with this church, with God. And the weight of that has been just a little different for me in the past few weeks. When you think about yourself, covenant member, 20-something years, when you look at yourself right now, Rob, at this time in our church, I don't know, what are you calling yourself, or what are you wrestling with, thinking about, of what you want to bring as a covenant member to Grace Point?
Mm. Yeah. When I think of covenant member, I think of a marriage covenant, and Christ is the church, and I think that if we are one with Him, as Scripture tells us, then we should take that view of the church. And the church is more than attendance. It's more than tithing. It's more than this building. It's Christ. And to me, although I've made a commitment to Grace Point Church, my commitment's to Christ. And for the last 20 years, God has wanted me here. And that's not to say that, I'd be lying if there wasn't times that I felt God's calling that maybe that wasn't where He wanted me. But I've always been called and assured that this is where He wants me through the different seasons of my life. And I think that to me, there again, it's that focus. It's not that I'm a covenant member of this building or of this church or even denomination, whatever you want to call it, but I'm a covenant member of Christ's church. And I will desire to use my talents, my gifts, whether that be physical or financial, or whatever that may be, to further the cause of Christ. And so to me, that's what a covenant member looks like. And that's the focus that I try to keep.
Well, I just want to thank you, Rob. As I say, you and your family have you've always been that place of encouragement. Like you just are. Whether it's me picking up the phone and being like, "Hey, do you want to come around this table and talk about Alpha and evangelism," or saving us at the airport in Zambia when we barely got back on the flight, and you were our leader and smoothed us right on through the airport. You just are always someone that has this message: be encouraged and redirect your eyes to Christ. And I'm going to add one after today, and that's if you're in a drought right now, if you're in a drought personally right now, that the rain is coming. And before it gets there, don't let the enemy have that space in your personal life or in our church as we wait for the rain, but wait well for the rain.
Mm-hmm.
Wait with your eyes on Christ.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you all for tuning in to episode 10. Please make sure to subscribe. We would love for you to be up to date on any time we put an episode out on Loop Plus. Thanks, everyone.